last video, we talked about ways that we can give our left hand a break when we're playing, but what about our right hand? Well, the quick answer is variety, but let's go deeper. Welcome to Learn Jazz Bass with Matt Rubicki. I'm glad that you're here. So after this last video I had about the left hand, I had a couple questions from social media, one from Sean on Facebook and Laurie on Instagram about the right hand. Let me read these questions real quick. Sean from Facebook says, what about just developing endurance altogether? He's at year 3 of switching from electric, and after multiple choruses, he gets tired, of course, and barely has anything left in the tank when it's time to solo. Totally understandable there. And then Laurie from Instagram says, it would be nice to see if you had any tips for dealing with the plucking hand becoming tired too. I feel that's common, especially at faster tempos. And so I wanted to talk about these things together, and I'm so glad that you guys asked these questions. Hopefully we can help lots of people with this video. For the video, I want to break it down into 4 sections. The first being talking briefly about the concept of what we're trying to do, then talking about alternate ways of fingering, this variety idea, then talking about developing strength, like gross strength, and then going on to talking about developing sort of agility or fluidity in conjunction with that strength. Many of the things we're talking about have to do with getting a good sound on the instrument, but that's not really my intention specifically with this video. This is more about just building that sort of endurance or stamina. Stamina can mean several things, and it's really a combination of all these various tools that we'll talk about. One part has to do with this gross strength. The other part has to do with using your body and using your knowledge of gravity and so on and so forth to allow you to have successful sessions for a longer period of time. There was a thing that my friend Justin Varnes told me many, many years ago, well over 20 years ago, that has always stuck with me in talking about sound on the bass. Even though he's a drummer, he had this really nice idea. When we're thinking about a ballet dancer on point, right, on their toes, you have to consider all the things that go into that: balance, strength, and also the concept that they are putting all this power of their body onto one small point. So everything that is the muscles being exerted and the weight of their body and so on is really going to this one singular point where their toes touch the ground. And so too, we want to direct our energy into a singular point. Now, that can be various points on our fingers, but ultimately we want to direct it to one part of the finger and have all the balance in our bodies as we play, all the gravity that we're using to hold ourselves up and to move our arms and so on, all directed towards this one particular point in our hand. And to help that, I want to bring extra attention to the fact that we don't want to exert excess movement in our body unless we absolutely have to. What I mean is, yes, of course, you should be loose enough that your shoulders move if it feels right to move. But to constantly be moving like this while you're playing is taking energy away from that single point that you want to have in your hand. So you want to try to reduce any extraneous motion that you might sort of have a tendency to do. Many of us have a tendency to move our feet and or move our head. Some people even move their arm too much, like their elbow out too much. So we want to think about really slimming down those movements to keep it focused. So as I said, having variety in your toolbox as far as how you can strike the string with your right hand is a huge and I think crucial aspect, especially at faster tempos, but just in being able to play a whole gig, it's really, really helpful to have at least 2, hopefully 3 different really comfortable ways that you can strike the string to give your hand a break and to change how your muscles are interacting with the string itself. So that variety, that's really, as I say, the simplest answer. Let's take a minute here. I made a sort of a supercut of various master bass players' right hands. Let's take a look at it together And let's just talk real briefly. It's just a couple minutes long. Pops Foster, hands off the string. Same with Wellman Bro, who's coming up. Hands way off the string, holding a bow at the same time, plucking from the side. Hand fully away from the fingerboard. Here's Jimmy Wood. Notice this is a medium tempo. In this part of the tune, he's playing sort of normal. And then as it gets faster, he raises his hand up to play softer. Oscar Pettiford, check out this style. His hand is all over the place and he's got this sort of almost claw pointed thing. But then here in this beautiful duo recording, he's playing so softly and so gently. Here's Israel Crosby, and notice how far his hand is down on the fingerboard and just how big that middle finger is, the shape of his hand. We're looking at shapes in this instance. Here's Ray. He's using a variety of shapes in these recordings that you can see. He's got a lot of the side of his finger on there. You notice his pinky out there. You've seen me do that before to balance the hand. Here's another, this is still Ray here, just showing a variety of ways that he's plucking the string. And here's Percy Heath, his poor knuckles. But notice again, soft hand, but his fingers are open to the side. They're side by side, different than somebody else. Paul Chambers, very rare to see video of him actually playing, especially close up. This is from a famous video we've probably all seen, but notice how he's playing essentially two fingers in tandem together. Same here from this live version of So What, gently plucking on the strings. His ring and pinky finger are open, but it all feels very relaxed. Sam Jones, also all his fingers are side by side, if you'll notice, rather than tucked back. We'll talk about that. And this surprises me that he's able to get such a big sound out of this, especially at these faster tempos. I put this here so that you can see how high he's playing. This is a very fast tempo tune there. But there's sort of his default place at the end of the fingerboard, but his hand is sort of open. His fingers are not pushed back. The master Ron Carter is masterful in gravity. The way that he is using the weight of his arm, it is so clear that he's just using his fingers and the weight of his arm to really float on the strings, which we're going to talk about in detail in just a moment. Really amazing softness there. Very rare to see Scott LaFaro playing. These are not good videos, I understand that, but I just wanted us to get a chance to look and see a little bit, if we can, about what his hand looks like. He's using two fingers. Looks like they're sometimes open, sometimes closed. Mingus, same thing. Very shocked he can get such a big sound with his hand open like that, with the fingers side by side. But he does. How far he's off the fingerboard. He's not even on the fingerboard anymore. Dave Holland doing a sort of three-finger thing like Niels Henning Orsted Peterson in this instance. But here, still Dave Holland, but a little more traditional with his fingers sort of back and moving normally. You should recognize these hands. Christian McBride, a very Ray Brown style. I love the way he comes at this angle across, and there you see using the side of his finger there for the weight of that sound. Reuben Rogers, I wanted to demonstrate here how he's got these sort of parallel two fingers working in tandem, which isn't super common. And then he's the first one that I learned this idea of using the first finger over the middle finger, just like Peter Washington here. You see he's got his pointer finger over his middle finger. That was walking. Here's soloing, same thing. And then here's Phil Norris's crazy fingers, which I have told him to his face. His fingers look crazy, and it's insane that he can do what he does. And he's got those double jointed digits that look real funny. So there's a very quick overview that was sort of chronological as well about how folks approached various ways of striking the hand. Let's talk a little bit more in detail about a grouping of variety of ways of doing the string. I'm going to move the camera so we can look at my hands from a couple different angles. Okay, so let's look at a few different ways that we can strike the string so that you can consider different ways that you can have some things in your particular vocabulary, so to speak, or in your toolbox. The first couple ones, I'm talking about just using one finger. And this is what I have advocated most for folks to get started with especially when they're starting out. And I will call this a one finger snap. This is the Ray Brown way. And the idea is that we're really sort of getting quite parallel to the string, like this. If you really get very parallel, your wrist tends to bend a lot like that, but we have to keep our thumb anchored. So you're gonna not have a full parallel like that. But the idea is that we are striking close to the end of the fingerboard or off the fingerboard. And we'll talk about exercises to work on this, but one finger snap, because it's got this kind of snap to it, this percussive thing. Then the other would be that what I talked about Peter Washington and Reuben Rogers, for example. As I said, I saw Reuben when I was at Berkeley 31 years ago. And I saw him play like this, and I said, "What the heck is that?" And I just kind of figured it out. Myself. The idea is the first finger goes over the second, like this, and that gives a little more weight to the sound, and also, if you sort of open up your hand a little bit away from the fingerboard, as opposed to coming right up next to the fingerboard like this, if you're sort of bringing the side of your palm out, you can, like that. Another way that's connected with one finger is what I call floating, and as I say, we're going to talk about that in detail. But the idea is, rather than coming so sort of aggressively on the string like the Ray thing and pulling this, it is you're sort of coming off again. You're bringing your side of your hand off a little bit and letting your finger sort of float on top of and through the string. It's a very relaxed approach. Basically looks the same as the Ray thing, but it is different. It's a much more sort of gentle. The other thing would be the same idea, but as I mentioned, but with putting your first finger over the second. So you're sort of floating on top of the string this way. At the same time, you want to pull through the string, right? Another idea would be the Paul Chambers side by side. So Paul was sort of like this, and sometimes his hand was kind of open. I can't do it very well, to be honest, but I'm striking the string at the same time with both fingers, side by side, and you can experiment with the angle that your particular hand touches the string. Another would be to, of course, alternate the two fingers. And there's sort of two ways I think about this. One is closer to an electric idea, where your hand is really perpendicular like this. Or, like I said, Reuben, it's very much closer to parallel, and you're alternating the fingers like this. I tend to default to an in-between. So it's not this, it's not this, it's in between, an angle like this. And I have to bend this knuckle to compensate for the length of the finger to try to keep them even next to each other like that. The other thing is to think about, these are not different shapes, but to think about all of these things related to two fingers and the floating idea. So your hand is the side of your palm is further away. Your thumb is sort of opened up. And you're striking the string. So as opposed to this, it's very hard to show visually. It's something you have to feel in your hand, but I am trying to explain it, and I'll explain it in a little more detail later. So those are, how many are those? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 different ways right there. And that doesn't include what we saw a lot of folks doing, which was their fingers were side by side like this. And in some kind of fashion like this, or gosh, I can't even do exactly what everybody was doing, but like this, right? So that's yet another option that may work for you, but I just want to demonstrate all these different ways that you can choose to pick from, and we should practice these things, and we'll talk about that. Before we leave this section, I don't want to forget to talk about the thumb. I know I don't know how rare it is, but rarely students of mine will try to put their thumb behind, and that's actually comfortable for them to put their thumb behind the fingerboard. I find this basically uncomfortable for me, partially because it makes it very hard to get from string to string. It's comfortable in one position, but to move from string to string, it's harder if the thumb is behind. So we want to keep it on the side of the fingerboard, on the flat part. And it will move slightly from, depending on where you are. It's going to come perhaps a little bit more on top of the fingerboard, sometimes a little more behind. And the angle here might change depending on what you're doing. But it's going to stay as a flexible anchor, so to speak. And one tip that I wanted to share is that if you're trying to keep your hand at the end of the fingerboard, Ron Carter has suggested, and I've done this myself, that you cut up a piece of Velcro and stick it right here. Or actually, I shouldn't say right there. Find where your thumb is, where it's a natural place for your fingers to land on the end of the fingerboard. Let's say it's there for me. I'm a little bit past, but so my thumb is here. So I'm going to put a Velcro sticker right above my thumb, so that when I have a tendency to, when I am not thinking, when my thumb starts to come up, I'm going to rub against that Velcro, and it's going to remind me, oh, I got to keep my thumb down. That has been effective for me and for other students of mine. Some people just don't want to put stuff on their bass. I get that too, but it's just an idea. I also wanted to bring up the idea that you yourself, please feel comfortable experimenting with amending these shapes to match your hand. We'll talk a little bit more about why I think a certain shape is better than another, but you should experiment. And in fact, I wanted to share with you that in the past 2 weeks, I have discovered, after 35 years of playing, a different way, a different shape that works in certain situations. I would always have my thumb, speaking of thumb, I would always have it basically sort of behind my fingers. But if I bring it out more, if I open up the thumb even more and so in other words, like this, I'm exaggerating, but instead of this, if I'm really pushing down like this, I find a different, I find another thing, another way of having variety, and that allows me to sort of play something that maybe was difficult with a different shape. So just keep experimenting. As much as I would like to have everybody think the way I think, I know that's not the case. But if you are in search of trying to keep your ring and pinky back, remember that I said we don't want to have extra movement. This is extra movement for a lot of people, keeping your fingers out. So I always advocate keeping them back. One way that we can help that is a cork or a pencil. Hold that cork in between those two fingers while you play. It feels a little weird, and you might need different size something. I realize this cork is a little big actually, but we're teaching these fingers to stay back, stay out of the way at least, stay relaxed, not to be out here because your hand is exerting energy to move these fingers. If you're trying to do this and these are taking the energy, that's not helpful for the sound or for your consistency and so on and so forth. All right, let's talk about strength now. In talking about building sort of brute strength, please, please, please don't hurt yourself. Please, please, please take lots of breaks. Even I'm saying during the actual process of working on your strength. And also, if your hand needs a break for a day or a couple days, whatever, like take breaks, take care of your hands, don't hurt yourself. Oh, and stretch. Oh my gosh, stretching is so helpful. If you're not familiar with some very, just a couple rudimentary stretches, anything that sort of gets your hand in this position is helpful for me. At least it's hard to do with the bass. Like if I'm like this, I feel the stretch in my forearms. If you push over to one side, I feel the stretch in my right arm here, your left. Here, the same. Also down like this, sort of the opposite, like that. Putting down in front of you, you can sort of gently pull on it and so on and so forth. But adding regular stretching is going to make a big difference. Also just sort of trying to touch your toes, try to hang there, open up your spine. That's all going to help a lot. If one wants to build strength, there is sacrifice involved. There is going to be some discomfort. I'm not saying hurt yourself. Think of it like going to the gym, weight training. Think of it like sets. When you're working on building up strength, you don't work out continuously. I mean, at a certain level, you can do that, but basic gym stuff, you don't work out continuously. You do 10 reps and then you rest. It's like the generic thing, right? Same idea here, rest after a set. And we'll talk about ways to think about that. So that's really, really critical. I really want to make a point of that. Don't hurt yourself. When we're talking about building strength in general, thinking about things that aren't necessarily directly related to playing the actual instrument. The one thing is weight training. If you're not familiar with that, haven't done it before, I invite you to do it. I have gotten so much out of it. I've been strength training since I was in high school, and I've had a lot of benefits from it, including, I believe, stronger hand grip because I'm lifting weights. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to be a gym rat. Just something will help. If you really don't want to go to the gym now, though, there are a couple things that you can do just without weights. One thing is to use some kind of a ball, like a tennis ball or a therapy ball that has some resistance, and you can squeeze there. Speaking of squeezing, there is a tool that I don't even know if they're really made anymore. This is called a Pro Hands by Gripmaster. Heavy tension, this particular one. And this machine essentially is you hold it in your hand like this, holding your hand like this, and you're squeezing. This has springs. I'm squeezing fingers individually. I don't do it very well on these fingers. I don't use these fingers, but the first and second finger I can squeeze like this, so I build up strength. I did it a lot more with my left hand when I was younger, trying to build that strength independently with those independent springs. That's something you could think about as well as the ball. And then in trying to deal with the arthritis in my thumbs, I had a physical therapist give me this particular kind of rubber band that's meant for putting around your fingers like so. Show it down here, putting around your fingers like so. And essentially just opening your hand like that with the resistance from the band works on a different set of muscles in your hand. So there are things that you can do for sure without this, with this instrument to actually build your strength. Another sort of a little unconventional thing is if you have the luxury of multiple instruments, you can set one instrument up to give you more resistance when you play it. Higher action, tight steel strings, and so on and so forth. Don't hurt yourself. But then, like, when you go to play another bass, either your other bass or a bass at a gig or something, and you're used to playing this like very heavy weight, it suddenly feels much easier because you're sort of building your muscles. Really also importantly too, is we have to make this part of our regular practice. Like you should slot it in to your practice time. I know we don't have a lot, but even a little bit of time will really honestly help. This is the kind of thing where you say 5 minutes a day can help. This can actually work that way. If you can do 10, that's great. But like working 5 minutes on trying to create a baseline doesn't really help. But like strength stuff, yeah, that can actually help. So fit it in, you have to devote time to it specifically. On the bass itself, but yet still not playing, is to make sure that you have access to a full-length mirror that you can put in front of you while you play or move to play in front of it so that you can see your body and see your hands, your right hand, while you play. There are cheap door mirrors at Walmart and Target and so on and so forth that you can hang on the back of your closet door, whatever. I cannot overstate how important and helpful this has been for me to look at myself playing and understand the feel, to experiment. Basically, it gives me a lot more options to just consider what my hand is doing when I'm actually looking at myself. The other things have to do with the body. When we are working on strength, remember your relationship of your body to the instrument as far as keeping your shoulders down, trying to, at least occasionally while you're doing it, lift your torso up. Don't do this when you're trying to do it, but rather this, because we're trying to get a lot of power from our back when we're doing it. We also want to remember to breathe, which I feel like I'm not doing right now very deeply, But while you're doing it, while you're doing something difficult, breathing in deeply, consciously while you're doing it allows you to relax and also allows your muscles to relax. And suddenly you get a little bit, couple microseconds extra little effort there. Something else that has been helpful for me, especially recently, I've been doing it a lot and I found it even more helpful than in the past. Carlos Enriquez told me about this. Take a towel. This is sort of a bath hand towel, so to speak, or a drying towel. And I'm going to wrap it around the neck of the base and I'm going to hold it relatively tightly. Just the weight of your arm can actually hold it here. And when you're doing these exercises with your right hand, we're going to have no sound coming out because what we're doing is preventing the string from giving us anything back. We want to be the one exerting the energy. We don't want to take advantage of those open strings or the pliability of the string yet. We want to be able to really focus on making the pluck by itself. That is extremely, extremely helpful. Lastly, as you see me do here, and as I mentioned before, when you're in this mode of strength training and it's this sort of mindless thing, be sure to have some of the time going to this uncomfortable place of very much the end of the fingerboard. It sounds weird. It sounds very strange on certain bases. It's not necessarily always the prettiest sound. It's going to cut through the band if you can get there all the time. But actually exerting energy here as more resistance still. And so when you come into a more natural place where you're a bit higher, your finger has gained strength and blood flow and so on and so forth. You don't have to master any of this, but certainly not all of it. I do strongly, strongly recommend, like I said, that you work on at least two. Add one to your repertoire if you're feeling like your endurance is low. Add one of these shapes to your repertoire that you can actually play with. You practice getting comfortable with it because you're going to pull it out while you're playing. You're going to change hand shapes while you're playing. Variety is the way you're going to make it through the gig. So let's take a second and do a little bit of a demo of how I work on this and how you might consider working on this. It won't be terribly long, but I just want you to really see the nuts and bolts of what I'm talking about. The first thing is that we want to, of course, try to be consistent with our sound and be consistent with our time. And of course, there's tons that we can do with metronomes for sure. I just wanted to encourage you that if you've got some quality, a good play along that is usable for this kind of exercise, please use that. I'm graciously using the Fieldbook, one of the tunes from the Fieldbook, which I've talked about before, this great app that's a recent addition to the App Store. And so I've got a version of All the Things You Are. The tempo is 130 something, I think, but it's got a live drummer, a recording of a live drummer, and I've been able to cut out the bass and piano, so it's just the drums. So it's like a metronome, but fancier and with a more natural feel, and it gives you the chance to also sort of listen to the drums, which can be more interesting than listening to the click of a metronome, of course. We also want to change up, and you'll hear me, see me change up the rhythms. Oftentimes I'll start with the lowest sort of rhythm that is comfortable there. It's quarter notes, then quarter note triplets, half notes, eighth note triplets, 16th notes if I can. And I'm changing the variety of which fingers I'm using when I'm doing it, which shape I'm using, which strings I'm using, how often I'm switching strings, and so on and so forth. So let me just turn on this other camera here and let me show you a little bit of a demo. 1, 2, 3, 4. my hand's getting tired. So I really feel the blood rushing to my forearm. So I'm taking a break to show you that we should take breaks in the middle of there. I was just getting to eighth notes with one finger, and I really need to lighten up a lot, which we'll talk about more in a second, but let's do now two finger. Right? And then my hand's tired again. I'm going to take a break and start on those triplets again. Triplet, 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 triplet. I'm a lot lighter. And try to stay, trying to do it myself. If you're feeling uncomfortable, your hand's out of control, try to stay in one place and let your hand sort of learn. Let your body take over a little bit. You want consistent sound. If you can, I'm experimenting with how aggressive I'm exerting my muscle here. So it takes some time. And as I say, you can switch between, ideas like changing strings like this. And so on. Remember, take breaks, pause. While I did this warm up this morning myself, your hands can get sort of tight again as they did throughout the day. So I'm not feeling as comfortable as I was this morning. If I spent 10 more minutes on it, I would feel a lot more comfortable because I did some this morning. But taking breaks during the thing is very helpful. Try to include multiple hand shapes in the practicing. Try to practice with something interesting. Of course, play with tempo and so on and so forth. But the idea is simply that you are dumbing down everything. You're taking away pitches entirely and only working on trying to build the actual strength of how you pluck the string, including when I'm at the end of the fingerboard and when I have the towel on, right? There will also be sections of time, be it in one day or in a week or whatever, where I am pulling as physically hard as I can without hurting myself. There's only so much of that you can do, but the idea is sort of like pushing yourself a little bit beyond what is comfortable so that you start to get more comfortable with a normal way of playing. As I said while I was sort of demoing that, at a certain tempo, or a certain subdivision of a certain tempo, it's basically impossible for nearly anybody that I know of to exert the same amount of energy into the string at a faster tempo or a faster subdivision. So we have to loosen up and play softer and play more gently. To that end, I wanted to talk more now of this idea that I call floating on top of the string, which has been an absolute lifesaver for me. And remember, I'm including that in this sort of shapes. It's not a different shape per se, but it's a different way of touching the string. So I have a couple of sort of props here to try to explain what I mean. One is, okay, this is just a whistle on the end of a string. And as you can see, of course, if I swing it back and forth or back and forth this way, the energy is coming from here where I'm swinging it. Or if I move, I can move my shoulder, right? And have that. But I am not physically doing anything from this point down to this hanging object, right? It's all a result of what's happening up here. And that is what I'm talking about with this floating thing. The energy, imagine this is your finger. These are your digits in here. This is my knuckle here. The energy is from here and the wrist, not from here, okay? This is soft and loose, and we're using the weight of it to have its own momentum. Or another way you might think about it is this. I've got a sort of a book light here, right? We've all used like reading music light too, right? Well, imagine this is a giant finger. Hopefully you can see that. Imagine this is a giant finger, and this is your fingertip. And here, oh, I turned it on. This is your fingertip here. Did I do it again? And this would be your knuckle here, right? This is just an elongated finger. So rather than striking the string from your digits here, I'm not bending this. Sorry, of course you wouldn't see that, right? Here's the knuckle, here's the fingertip. I'm not bending this part here to strike the string. I'm bending this part here. So this whole finger, all the knuckles, move along in a gentle way with the weight of the finger. And conceptually, that's what I'm talking about. But actually doing it in practice is a little bit trickier. It might actually be easier if I don't use the towel on this, at least at the beginning. It doesn't include like the same muscles that we use when we're pulling in the other ways, when we're pulling across. Like, it's not this inside of your hand, it's not that kind of motion. It's really more that the thumb is a pivot, that the weight of your arm and your hand pivots on and lets fall. The trick is to keep your finger on the string in the right way so that it is still striking enough of the string. Like, if I'm not on the string enough and I just do this, if I just do this and it just falls, you know, if I'm not in control, I'm not really getting any sound out. I mean, you can, that sort of works, but that's way different than this. And what I'm doing here is I'm thinking about the same idea where I want to get the center of, as much of the center of the string in the middle of my finger. And oftentimes people might do this, you pull on the string for a second, and if you look at the skin on the finger afterwards, you'll see where the string is. Maybe the camera can pick that up or not, but there's a line here on my finger. And so that location is the same as when you're pulling with the middle of your hand. But rather than that, you're opening it up, you're opening up your palm a bit and letting the weight of your arm bring the finger across the string. If you get that feeling right, the next thing is to sort of control your wrist in a way that you can then stay sort of on top of the strings the whole time. So my finger now, my wrist now has become more bent, it was slightly bent. Now it's a little more bent, but comfortable because I'm not exerting pressure there. I'm exerting pressure here, or in my lats, or just the weight of my arm. Experiment with it. I know it's really hard to communicate, but I have the feeling that there's a connection in this, in the way that these great masters are able to get this sound. I see it most in the Ron Carter video we saw. I think Ron is really, really amazing at this. And that's what I'm advocating with, I guess, maybe a slight change. A couple other miscellaneous things to think about when you're doing these exercises, both floating and strength, is to consider arriving early on the string you're going to, just like we oftentimes, when we're dealing with the left hand, when we're learning to play, and one thing we can think about is like getting your left finger down before you strike, right? So the note comes out cleanly. Well, it's the same thing with the right hand. See about how fast you can get from one string to the next, striking and then getting to the next one. Even if it's not in time, it's like an exercise in itself. How quickly can you move from the strike to being prepared for the next string? That's something to work on. You can also work on sort of string crossing extreme. And what I mean is forcing yourself to add E to G regularly, add E to D regularly, add A to G regularly. Like, don't just keep going consecutive strings. Like, make a far string jump part of the routine, so to speak. All of this might be also thought of, if you're into sports, as SAC training, so speed, agility, quickness, as opposed to weight training. So now let's take a second and sort of put this a little bit more into one kind of context. I'm going to play along with the field book, and as I say, the guys graciously gave me another track to use of Cherokee, and so I'm going to try to play along with this, and I'm going to try to change up my hand shapes as I'm walking at this extremely fast tempo. It's 300 something plus. I can't remember what it is, but it's very fast. So see if this helps to see me change my hand shapes as it's going. So I'm sure you get the idea, and it's not complicated. You guys are smart folks. Just as one other little extra thing, as I said, Laurie from Instagram sent me or commented on my post asking this question, and we had an exchange about it, and he very kindly gave me permission to actually put his video in my video here, because I wanted to talk about his right hand. And I think this goes to everything that we've discussed in this video so far. So what I'm going to do is put it on screen, and I'm going to play it here too, and I want to talk through a little bit of what I'm seeing. So first of all, Laurie absolutely sounds great. Intonation is great, time feel is great, sound is great, and everything like that. But remember, he's feeling tired. And so what possibly could be the reason why? And I think if we look at his hand shape here, notice the way, Laurie, that your ring and pinky fingers are not, they're not controlled, nor are they relaxed. They are engaged with your first and second finger. So, and look at there, your ring fingers sort of resting on the string below it. So it's moving a lot like that. So you are exerting twice the energy you need to when you're playing. So I also notice your thumb is very much behind the fingerboard. In this particular instance, I'm looking at, actually for the bulk of it, it looks like it's behind the fingerboard. That is almost assuredly in connection with these two fingers back, not being back, the reason why you're getting tired. There's a possibility too about how you're holding the bass, but it's hard to see the entire thing from this video. It's restarted now on my end. Again, I'm just bringing out this particular thing about Laurie's playing. The sound is fantastic, and ultimately that's what we're looking for. I wouldn't criticize what I saw in this video had he not asked me. In other words, because the sound is so good, I'm like, I don't really care ultimately how you get there. But if you're feeling a resistance to where you want to go for the reason of endurance, these are the kinds of things that we need to talk about and to think about. Again, the ultimate goal is to express ourselves musically as best we can and not have obstacles. So if whatever you're doing isn't giving you an obstacle, it's fine. But the reason we have technical specifics and something is right or not tends to be because it is set up in such a way that allows us to not hurt ourselves, play for a long time, get the best sound, execute what we want to execute on the instrument. And again, Laurie, thank you for letting me put this up here. I think this very simple thing, getting your thumb around the side of the fingerboard instead of behind it, and also working on a different way to deal with these fingers here, whatever it is, be it teaching them by holding the cork or changing the relationship of the side of your hand, something. Once you bring the thumb around to the side of the fingerboard instead of behind, that's going to also change the weight of your hand and your arm and so on and so forth. So these fingers, your ring and your pinky, may naturally relax more. But because your thumb is behind, you're really sort of limiting yourself there. And I think that's the reason why you asked the question. I hope that all this stuff was really helpful for you all. I do have a PDF of this if you want to sort of get notes on all the stuff I talked about. I put it in a text format for you to reference for later. And thanks for joining me today as always. Always remember, straight ahead and strive for tone.